Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our final session in our series on more issues that everyone faces. Again, today's topic, like yesterday's, is not exactly the happiest, but, and as you can see kind of from the title, today's topic is about abuse, so to speak, which this isn't to say that everyone experienced being abused, but unfortunately, abuse is a plague that kind of permeates society. If you yourself are not abused, it's possible that a friend or family member has been. It's possible that maybe even you yourself have abused someone and you are maybe regretting that. There's more than one way to look at this. So regardless, for those of you that are following along in your Bibles at home, we are in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verses 24 through 34. It's Jesus healing the bleeding woman. A little bit of background information. For those of you that aren't familiar with this story, on the way to the house of a man whose daughter was dying, Jesus encounters a woman who suffered from chronic bleeding. Her affliction was social as well as physical, since, according to the Old Testament laws, both her and anyone touching her were considered unclean. Jesus heals and comforts her. So, that's sort of the background information. As always, we do have optional icebreaker questions, so we'll go through those. First one is, do you consider yourself more outgoing or shy? It depends on who I'm with. At first, I am a little bit more shy. I am one of those people that likes to kind of test the waters, get an idea of what are safe topics to talk about, what are not safe topics to talk about. Just that's kind of my people-pleasing tendencies, trying to test, okay, what can we talk about, what can we not talk about? If we talk about something, what kind of a stance do I have to take, so on and so forth. But after I've kind of figured out what I can talk to whom about, then I'm much more outgoing, I'm much more talkative. But it's just that initial kind of shyness that needs to be broken through. So I'm shy at first, but outgoing down the road, if that makes sense. What about you all? Do you consider yourself to be more shy or outgoing? Let me know in the comments below. Second question is, how do you feel when you are crowded into an elevator or subway? I'm fine. I think this question is kind of getting at, do you feel claustrophobic? Do you maybe feel kind of closed in? But elevators, no, that's never really been an issue for me. Subways, that's never really been an issue for me. I'm fine in crowded spaces. But then again, generally I'm on the outside, so I'm on the edges of the subway, I'm by the windows, or I am along the railing, along the edges of the elevator, so I'm not stuck in the middle. So I guess I'll revise my answer. If I were stuck in the middle of there, feeling like I'm surrounded by people, then that might be a little uncomfortable. But for the most part, I get by the aisle, I get by the window and along the railing in an elevator, things like that. So generally I'm fine. What about you all? How do you feel when you are crowded into an elevator or subway? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, we will get to the reading for today. Again, we are in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verses 24 through 34. Listen now for the word of our Lord. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus recognized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding around you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. Our first question in regards to this reading is, what would you consider to be the worst of this woman's problems? Her physical suffering, being financially drained, being a social outcast, always being religiously impure, or guilt and low self-esteem? I would say that it's being a social outcast. She has this physical ailment that results in her being outcast and pushed aside by most, if not all, of society. She has seen doctors. These doctors have not healed her, and if anything, they've done more damage to her, meaning people are only going to strive harder to push her aside. She is physically suffering, but she is not receiving care, I guess is the best way to put it. The doctors are not giving her physical care. Because of her ongoing condition, she is not getting care from friends, family, the neighbors, anything like that. The rest of society is just casting her aside. She is an outcast until she stops bleeding and becomes ritually pure. So, not only suffering physically, but being isolated because of it. I would say that that is adding insult to injury. What about you all? What would you consider to be the worst of this woman's problems? Let me know in the comments below. Number 2. What do you think gave her the courage to touch Jesus' clothes? She didn't have anything to lose. She was desperate. She believed she'd be healed. She thought she could slip away unnoticed. Definitely, it sounds like she was desperate. Being marginalized, being socially outcast. She didn't have anything to lose. Those are both valid answers, but I think it was belief. She was desperate. She believed with all her heart that, Jesus has made the paralyzed and the lame walk. He has healed the sick. He has brought the dead back to life. He is on his way to do it again. She believed in her heart of hearts that she would be healed. And I think that faith, that belief, kind of gave her strength to go forward to touch his cloaks. That's my interpretation, though. Let me know what you all think. What do you think gave her the courage to touch Jesus' clothes? Let me know in the comments. Question number 3. Why was it important to Jesus to know who touched him? So the crowd would know a miracle had taken place, so he could point out that the woman's faith had healed her. So the woman could know she had been given God's peace. So it would be clear her physical healing included social healing. All of the above. Definitely, so the crowd would recognize that a miracle had taken place. Once they know that, they'd be looking for the recipient. Once they know who the recipient of this miracle is, this woman has been physically healed. She is no longer constantly bleeding. So she is now been made ritually, religiously clean, so to speak. She may still have to go to the temple and have a cleansing ritual, but she's been physically healed. She does not need to be cast aside anymore. This woman has touched his cloak and then tried to slip away into the crowd. So she is apprehensive about Jesus knowing that she has done this. She is a social outcast. She doesn't know how he is going to react to it. So, Jesus pointing out to her that she has God's peace, that her faith has made her well. This is a reassurance to her that she hasn't actually done anything wrong, per se. She's gone up to Jesus. She has touched his clothes without asking him first, without asking for healing. She has gone for it. Her faith has given her that strength and has healed her. But also, along with her knowing that her faith has made her well, him physically saying that, everyone in the crowd is kind of gathered around him. They can hear him. They would then hear, this woman's faith has healed her. We have cast her aside. Her faith has made her well, though. So now we have people then paying attention to, what could my faith do? What power does my faith have in my life to change my life for the better? We have everyone else kind of learning through this a lesson on the power of faith. I don't think that there's any one reason that Jesus needed to know. I would say that all of these are very valid answers, and they're all very much intertwined together. They're all complementing each other. They're all supplementing each other. They are all supporting each other in one enmeshed answer. All of them happened at once. I wouldn't say that it's one but not another. But that's me. Let me know what you all think. Why do you think it's important Jesus knew who touched him? Let me know in the comments below. Number 4, what is the most significant aspect of this story to you? That Jesus delayed helping a healthy man in order to heal a common woman. This woman's faith. That Jesus paid attention to an individual in a crowd. That the woman was healed just by touching Jesus' garments. I'm kind of tied between the second and the third answer. Definitely the woman's faith is an important aspect to pay attention to in this story. It's not her actions that have made her well. It's not her necessarily touching his garments that has made her well. It's her faith. Her faith led her to approach him, led her to touch his garments. Her faith is the catalyst. Her faith is that aspect of strength for her. So definitely her faith is something very important to pay attention to. The other one is that Jesus paid attention to an individual in the crowd. Here we have this lesson also of divine providence. It's not just a lesson of the power of faith, but a lesson in God's intricate and intimate involvement in all of our lives. It's not just God helping out humanity as a whole, it's God helping out the individual humans, the individual members of the unified body. Essentially, God's being very much intimately involved in our lives, God's Spirit resting within all of our hearts so that God knows all of us intimately, and Christ dying not for humanity as a whole, but for the individual humans again, that all humans individually might be presentable and come before God. So God knows us, God allows us to know him. This very intimate reconciliation of all of humanity to God, but individual humans to God as well, those individual relationships between a person and God. So this is a lesson of divine providence, a lesson of God's intimate involvement in each of our lives. So I would say it's both of those, the woman's faith, Jesus paying attention to the individual in the crowd. I would say those are both equally significant aspects, but my opinion, let me know what you all think. What is the most significant aspect of the story for you? Let me know in the comments below. Number 5, in what way does this woman most remind you of yourself? Having pain that no one can heal, struggling with finances, feeling alone, feeling spiritually impure, being shy about asking for help. This woman reminds me of myself most in being shy about asking for help. Whether by maybe watching too many movies and TV shows when I was young, or watching, how self-sufficient my brothers, it seemed to be, how self-sufficient my parents seemed to be. Maybe it was hearing "pull yourself up by the bootstraps" a few too many times. I grew up feeling like I needed to do everything for myself. I needed to be independent, self-sufficient. Asking for help was a sign of weakness, essentially. So, asking for help is something that a younger version of me has been very apprehensive at doing, that has luckily since changed, and I'm definitely much better about that. But that's the one that really jumps out at me, is not just myself, but just humanity as a whole. Our felt need of being self-sufficient, our apprehension at admitting our vulnerability, our own mortality, even. And just saying those two words, help me. I think that's what the woman reminds me of the most. What about you all? In what way does this woman remind you of yourself? Or, you could answer it in the broad spectrum. How does this woman remind you of humanity as a whole? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6, when do you remember being the most desperate for God's help? When I was between my first call and this call, just looking for the next place God wanted me to serve. It wasn't one call ended and I immediately picked up with the next one. It was a number of months between when the first one ended and when this one, my second call, began. So I think I remember being the most desperate then, just trying to sort finances out, trying to maintain hope, trying to be faithful, trying to find and discern where God wanted me next. That's the first thing that comes to mind anyway. What about you all? When do you remember being the most desperate for God's help? Let me know in the comments below. Question number 7. How did Jesus touch you at your time of desperation? I felt his presence and his peace. He helped me figure out the best course of action. He sent someone to be with me. He literally healed me through miraculous means. He healed me through the skills of other people. I'm not really sure. Well, this sounds like a follow-up to the last question. So in that regard, he helped me figure out the best course of action. He definitely helped me to remain open to options I may not necessarily have considered otherwise. Definitely wanting to stay close to Michigan so I can have an excuse to go to Detroit Tiger games and University of Michigan football games and watch them on TV and all of this. Jesus helped me to remain open to maybe God's calling me to somewhere a little further away than the Great Lakes region, which that's what ended up happening. Who knew? He helped me figure out the best course of action, and during that time, I was able to maintain a certain level of peace. So the first one of just feeling his presence, feeling his peace during that time, trying to remain hopeful. What about you all? How has Jesus touched you so that in your times of desperation? Let me know in the comments below. Number 8, what do you need to ask Jesus to heal you from today? Physical problem, a family problem, financial problem, an emotional problem, or a spiritual problem? I guess out of all of those, a spiritual problem, maybe? Just with the second wave of the pandemic going on, with a more heated election season than I have ever seen, 2016 included. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen, and just trying to maintain hope during what seems bleak times. It feels like I'm burning the candle at both ends, trying to be hopeful. But that's the only thing I can think of. I don't even think about that very much. It kind of just happens. But anyway, I guess, that's the only spiritual problem I can think of. I can't think of any other problems emotionally, financially, familially, or physically. So what about you all? What do you need to ask Jesus to heal you from today? Let me know in the comments below. Last but not least, our final question is, how can this group pray for you? As always, please feel free to leave your comments, questions, concerns in the comment section down below, either here on Facebook or later on the my YouTube page. If you have prayer requests, please feel free to shoot me an email, text, give me a phone call. If you want to stop in and visit, please feel free to stop in and visit. I have office hours 8 to noon, Mondays to Thursdays. Otherwise, we will begin our next series tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about transitions in life, changing careers, changing relationships with children, changing spiritual life, things to that effect. I'm kind of excited. It sounds like it's going to be a fun series, so hopefully I will see you there. So until tomorrow, stay well, stay safe. God bless.